Welcome, Mr. Ambassador Ahmad Wali Massoud. It was prior ambassador of Afghanistan to London, and as well brother to the famous commander of Afghanistan, which was the Commander Massoud, well known as the Lion of Panjshir. And at the same time is uncle to the current Commander Massoud that is leading the resistance. So welcome to this interview to Portugal. Let me introduce my colleagues. My name is Vitório Cardoso from the Portuguese East Indies Company, Centro for Strategic Analysis. And then my colleagues, Mr. Branquinho is the political analyst, and as well Mr. Marques is the security specialist. Mr. Branquinho was a former journalist and director of the Diabo Portuguese newspaper, and Mr. Marques was from the Portuguese Air Force and did a commission to Afghanistan during the ISAF operations.
Very nice to see you all.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, Ambassador. It's a pleasure.
So, Mr. Branquinho, I will pass the floor to you to start the interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitório. Ambassador, again, it's a pleasure to have you. I would like to start with the announced Taliban so-called government in Afghanistan, and we could see that the announced cabinet is dominated by members of the old guard. So we've been hearing some people in the West talking about referring to the new Taliban, or so-called moderate, hoping for a moderate Taliban version of the past. But we can see by the announced government that things are not this way. And does this mean the Taliban haven't changed, or what is different from the Taliban 20 years ago, the prior regime, and today's with the announced government and the Taliban action that we have seen, namely against the Afghan population?
Thank you very much. Thank you. And let me say that, yes, of course, there are changes from the past Taliban and today Taliban. Today Taliban is worse than the past Taliban, more violent, more unruly, irresponsible. I've got a lot of big contact with the terrorist network around the world. They have got so many terrorist groups with them, and they are so uncompromising right now. You can see, as you put it rightly, the way they have set up their own government. You can see they're all almost from the same ethnicity. We have got more than 30 ethnicity in Afghanistan, but they have got almost 95 or 98% of the whole cabinet from one ethnicity altogether, from the same group, from the same party, from the same ethnicity, from the same school of thought and theology, and more of them violent, and some of them, they are in the blacklist of the United Nations, of the Security Council, some of them very known criminal, some of them very known narcotic dealers. So I don't know, what should I say? So you can see that is the government, the kind of government represent the aspiration of the Taliban and of the change of the Taliban. If that is the change, it's better not to have a change, really.
But what do you think? Should the world, namely the West, recognize this kind of government, and at what risk?
Well, you see, what we are doing, what we are saying, the West, the international community, especially the West, have always announced that they are against terrorists, they are against the violence, they are against tyranny. That was their value, and they really kind of imported to different other countries that this is our way of thinking of the world. And 20 years ago when they came in the notion of either you are with us or with the terrorists. So they came to root out terrorism in Afghanistan. But 20 years later, they really kind of taken from the Taliban, giving back to the Taliban, from terrorists, another again to the terrorists. So what happens that 20 years of the world community investment in Afghanistan, they all went in vain. Nothing really, giving it back to them. So I do think that if they go for some sort of recognition, that will be a catastrophe. We are already suffering in Afghanistan anyway. We have been suffering for years and years. We don't have much to lose. But what about the rest of the people? You all lose everywhere. And especially now Europe, more than any other time, they are in the kind of imminent danger of some sort of threat from Afghanistan and from some regional countries who are also kind of promoting terrorism in that area. The Americans, they made a deal. I don't think if that deal will benefit America, that will help America. They made a deal with the terrorists, and eventually they were on the side of kind of transferring the power to the Taliban, and they did that one. But now this is Europe who are kind of in the sort of imminent danger of this threat, of this terrorism. And this is one side politically. But then what about, I mean, we have to make a very red line. Either there is terrorist violence and all of that, this is humanity and all of these values that we have got. We really have to make that red line. If we don't have that red line, if everything is mixed up, then the terrorists will take the advantage of the situation. They will manipulate the whole thing to their own advantages. So that is why recognition of such type of a kind of terrorist network and a regime of Taliban, it will be a catastrophe for everybody. Then we'll have to pay for years and years for a generation and generation to come, because already they have made Afghanistan a hub of terrorism. How exactly we should recognize them?
Well, exactly. Ambassador, you mentioned Europe and the risk for Europe. And I would like to quote the British Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab. And he said, and I quote, "We need to adjust to the new reality in Afghanistan." Well, I have to say, I was struck with this, with his sentence, and I would like to ask you if you read this statement as a message of defeat or a recognition of the Taliban regime and the new status quo as the new status quo in Afghanistan today.
Well, let me say that I was yesterday in a book launch of a British famous writer, and that book launch was done by Sandy Gold. Sandy Gold is a very famous British writer, and he wrote his last book about Commander Massoud in the name of the Afghan Napoleon. And he launched this book, and there were quite a big number of British friends of Afghanistan who have been there then. And I was talking to them that, look, yes, I know that you have got close relation with Pakistan. You can exert influence on Pakistan like that. I'm pretty sure that Pakistan have got quite a large influence on the Taliban itself. So therefore, if new reality is to recognize terrorism, that's a very bad reality. We really have to fight that reality, to resist that reality. But if the real reality is something else that we don't know, they have to kind of to introduce us. Who is that new reality? What is that new reality? I mean, the very basic thing that we all agree universally is that to respect human rights, women's rights, to respect democracy, election, freedom of press, and everybody's life. This is very kind of universal. If that is the fundamental of the new reality, okay. But the Taliban are not, because Taliban is part of a big network of terrorist group, and their only objective is just to continue with this terrorist activity worldwide. They are not going to there to kind of make a government. Taliban have never been able to kind of make a government that way. They have been fighting and fighting. You know, for the past 1.5 years, there have been peace process. Internationally, that peace process were kind of helped and assisted. But after 1.5 years, you can see that despite all the promises, they really launched an attack inside Afghanistan, killing hundreds and thousands of people, and they did not give no regard to this world community to really stick with the peace. So if the new reality is terrorism and fight this bad reality, we should avoid that one. Then we will regret it. I know that the British have got a closer relation with Pakistan, and Pakistan have got the Taliban. But let me say that it cannot help the situation. this sort of influence may not help the situation. We really have to stand firm against terrorism. That's the reality.
Hello, Mr. Ambassador. Let me interrupt you and ask, what would you would say differently since your conference in Pakistan in the International Strategic Studies Institute?
Well, when I was
6 months ago.
Yes, 6 months ago. And in fact, I was about a few weeks ago back again, and a bigger delegation of some political leaders of Afghanistan went to Pakistan to see how exactly we can prevent the fall of Afghanistan. And we did have a very kind of extensive talk with the military as well as the political leadership of Pakistan. And of course, in front of in the presence of every other leader, they promised that they would do something. And what we really expected them to do, we said that, well, the first priority for the situation is that to tell the Taliban to stop the violence, to stop the selective killing of some people, to stop the launching attack to the Panjshir, to stop many things. So this would really kind of create a sort of trust-building process. And then the second priority will be to have a sort of provisional government. And the third one will be to really go for a sort of permanent government. Then the permanent government should be based on the reality of ethnicity of Afghanistan. And the structure should be as such that nobody really could impose their own ideas on any other ethnic. Because, for example, if the Taliban do not accept democracy, do not accept the education, do not accept the women right, men right, if the Taliban kind of sticking with their own way of life, so it's better that the structure will be somehow kind of a system of a decentralized system, so everybody can live with their own way, probably under one umbrella of Afghanistan, but everybody can live in their own way. But nobody should be able to impose on each other their own belief. So what we talked with Pakistan, that was the case. And they, well, we can do our best to do something. He said, well, the dust is high, let the dust to come down, and we can do the things like that. But it seems that it's months and months ago we have been telling such things. And then again, a few weeks ago, that we were in Pakistan, we said something. But what we see in practice inside Afghanistan, it was completely on the contrary, completely different, completely opposing to what they promised and what we talked about.
I don't know, Mr. Marcus, any questions that you would like to pose in terms of strategic questions?
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. I would like to ask, in terms of strategic, since we hear that the Taliban movement through the press conferences has assumed itself like a legitimate ruling political entity, but they should have at least two factors, the internal recognition and the de facto territorial control. And in this aspect, in this second factor, the territorial control, could you clarify for us which regions the Taliban effectively control in this moment?
Well, let's put it this way. The Taliban launched their attack, and they, of course, they went and they took quite a large number of provinces in Afghanistan, although their control is still not kind of firm, because wherever they control, then again, some local power came up again. But then, of course, they were stopped in the Panjshir Valley, in the Panjshir province, and there was a resistance in Panjshir, as well as a adjacent province of Baghlan, which is called Andarab, that area called Andarab. So they were resistant. Although they brought forces from across Afghanistan, thousands and thousands of forces, and also they brought their unit, it's a kind of very dangerous unit called Unit Number 1, RED, and that's all terrorists, international terrorists in that Unit Number 1, very dangerous, very horrific unit. They also brought that one to really attack Panjshir, and eventually after about 10 days of intensive fighting, they were able to break the front line and just enter the Panjshir Valley. But the Panjshir Valley terrain is as such that you can only kind of take the road, but the road does not correspond that the whole Panjshir has been taken. Then the forces who were fighting, they were scattered around the valley and side valleys all over there. and they started to adapt a sort of a new technique of war, a guerrilla warfare. And this is exactly the moment what's happening there. And just yesterday, again, they showed us, there was a show of strength, that they showed that they're alive and they can fight the terrorism, they can fight the Taliban. So the terrain is still holding, some terrain is still holding under control of the resistance, and it will expand. So this is one part. And of course, the second part is that the resistance now do not only kind of stay in a kind of geographical land there, but also it is coming to the kind of in the national and international sentiment that now everybody kind of raising the voice of the resistance. You can see the women of Afghanistan, different cities of Afghanistan, they are raising the voice of the women, the voice of the resistance in the street. You can see the younger generation who do not believe in Taliban, whose belief is completely different to the Taliban, they're raising their voice as well. You can see civil society in Afghanistan. Almost every sector of Afghanistan life is raising their voice, not only inside Afghanistan, across the globe as well. So therefore, yes, we do have some terrain. Yes, we do have the voices. Yes, still our kind of foreign ministry and the embassies, all of them, they're intact. Still, they have not submitted to the Taliban. There are quite a few things still we do have like that. But we are trying, as to respond to my French before, we are trying to really kind of present ourselves that, look, still we are here. This is the people of Afghanistan. That's a terrorist group, and they are taking the whole thing by force, not by consent, not through election. Yes, they have taken by force, by terrorist force, but they have not taken the hearts and minds of the people. So, but it's a long gap to take the hearts and minds of the people. If the legitimacy is just to take something by force, then in every country, some forces will come together to take something by force, by violence, by terrorism. But if the legitimacy means that you have to have the consent of the people, you have to really uphold the very basic values of every society. If that is the case, then of course they are not eligible to have this legitimacy.
Mr. Ambassador, and then what is the current humanitarian situation inside the Panjshir Valley and outside the Panjshir Valley?
Well, it's disastrous. Of course, what they have done, why they have taken it so hard with the Panjshir Valley, because Panjshir Valley have been the hub of the resistance, and for the past 40 years, Panjshir has stood as the symbol of the resistance, symbol of the freedom against the Russian invasion, against the terrorism, against all of that. So therefore, since the Taliban have always had a sort of very bloody nose by the Panjshir Valley and the resistance there, so that's why they want to take revenge. And just they have gone there, they cannot fight the soldier or the fighter, but they go to the civilian, to every house, to every village. They take some men and women out and they just shoot them. One by one, they shoot them. They have done it in so many villages in the Panjshir Valley. And at the same time, they have kind of cut the whole supply. There's no food, no communication, no water. We do have water, but no communication, no food, no essential community, nothing. So it's kind of very dire situation. On one hand, they are continuing their kind of massacre. On the other hand, they are just abandoning the whole essential community to the Panjshir as a whole. So it's a kind of very kind of disastrous situation.
And then outside the Panjshir Valley?
Outside Panjshir Valley, well, as we know that since the Taliban have come, the Taliban still have not been able to really provide the basic service. Still, they are not together really to provide the basic service like that. You could see what happened to the airport, the way they manage. You can see the people who do not have a salary, who do not have any mean to really live somewhere. You can see the sort of economic situation of the whole country is really very dire because there is no money, there is no community, nothing. And then the Taliban, on the top of that, when the soldier of the Taliban, they are kind of forcing the local to give them food everywhere in the different villages and different valleys. They're forcing the local to give them food, but people don't have that much food to give this Taliban soldier. So as a whole, the situation is very disastrous in Afghanistan.
Mr. Branquinho, please proceed.
Ambassador, you were talking about the Panjshir Valley, and we saw images of the Taliban announcing they took over the Panjshir Valley. And yesterday, striking images of Taliban profanating the Commander Massoud's mausoleum. And well, is this just a propaganda coup, or there's more than meets the eye, as we say?
Well, of course, they have done it. They have been very disrespectful on Commander Massoud, and so they feel so kind of downgraded. They feel so low. They feel so much out of decency that they even cannot respect a tomb, a grave, a stone. They cannot. I don't know why they're so much like that, because stone is stone, dust is dust. But they have got so much hatred in their thing that they even cannot respect that one. This is dust, this stone, but you cannot really conquer the idea of the people. You cannot conquer the hearts and minds of the people. You have to conquer that one, not to go with the gun to just break something with the hammer, so that, well, we have done such thing. Not only that one, they also have gone to our houses in Panjshir, and they have destroyed the houses. They have even taken the clothes and just burned them and torn them apart, the whole, whatever they are possible. You know, what else can you expect from a terrorist? Terrorist is terrorist. That's what you can expect. So now with this sort of situation, when some circles or some government or some politician may say that, well, it's a new reality, shall we do something? Well, you deal with what? With criminal, with terrorists. I mean, this is very hard evidence. Everyone knows that one. And we have got hundreds of this all hard evidence everywhere. So it's better that, you know, we should not kind of, because of some sort of interest or deals or something like that, we really kind of change the whole reality as the new reality. That's not good for the humanity. That's not good for the global cause. That's not good for our own conscience.
Well, Ambassador, your brother, Commander Massoud, was a charismatic figure. He inspired the Northern Alliance resistance, the fight for a multi-ethnic Afghanistan. I should ask you, is his influence still a great influence today for the resistance today?
Yes, of course. Yes, you see, more than before. You can see now the resistance has been taken up by all across the country. Now, especially the second resistance that we have started, the whole family, and of course his son Ahmad Massoud, who was at the moment in the field there. Of course, it has given a big boost again. Why bigger than before? Because of communication, because of the awareness of the people, because we have got 70% of younger generation who really kind of have got access to communication, because of women are aware of their own rights and all of that. So if we put all of them together, Afghanistan really has passed from, let's say, 20 years back. It is a new Afghanistan. But with the new Afghanistan, we have brought a very medieval terrorist group to govern you. So it doesn't kind of, that's why there is a clash between the two. So that is why we are saying that the Taliban or terrorist group, they cannot sustain themselves in Afghanistan. They will be very short-lived there. But of course, depending that we have to really support the right people there in Afghanistan, not to kind of because of some business deal in the country on there. So we really have to make kind of find a accommodation with the terrorists, because that will hurt everybody.
Well, late Commander Massoud was also a brilliant military commander. So I can see his son today is an inspirational figure as well. But does he have the skills of his father? And well, not just to mobilize the resistance, but to organize military in a military form the resistance.
He definitely has got some very good skill, very high skill, definitely. But at the same time, as you put it rightly, he may not have the same experience as him, because for him it's new. But let me say that Massoud, Commander Massoud, the first Massoud, he started a struggle when he was 23 years old. But Ahmad Massoud is 32 years old. So it means when he was young, at the youngest age, he started it. So at 32 years, is almost 10 years older. So he can do it. Of course, he can do it. But it may take a time. Already, he has been successful to go and stand against the onslaught of the Taliban in the Panjshir Valley, where Taliban took every place of Afghanistan, but except the Panjshir. To go and risk his life, it means that he is committed to the cause itself. he has been bright enough to really stand there. He is charismatic as well in inspiration. But at the same time, what else is happening, that there are so much, as I said, the world have changed so much because of communication and all of these networks.
Exactly.
So it really have put them much up. So yes, he has got the skills, but it just may take a bit of time to kind of organize the things.
Maybe, I don't know if my colleague Marcus wants to ask something about the equipment and the things in the terrain.
Actually, I would like, please, thank you. But I would like to ask first, a part of the Afghan resistance, are there other groups that oppose the Taliban regime in the terrain for now? We heard about Daesh K and other groups like this. How is the panorama there?
Well, let's put it this way. You know, when the American made a deal with the Taliban 1.5 years ago, and the American representative or ambassador, Dr. Realizou, who was also had closer tie with the Taliban from very long time ago, so he struck a very bad deal with the Taliban, suggesting that, well, we made a deal with the Taliban, American will be safe. He did not say that, well, the world will be safe. He said that America will be safe. And at the same time, the Taliban have promised to really not allow Daesh or other terrorist group to operate. But I think both of these suggestions are wrong. First of all, America is not safe. It cannot be safe that way, that they think. And as a superpower, they should take responsibility of the whole community, because terrorism is international terrorism. So America wants to be a superpower. Of course, he should not kind of take himself away from the whole challenge and say, well, I have done my own deal and the rest you know. That's not a good thing. That's not a good responsibility. And the second thing, of course, is that why they will not be safe? Because Taliban do not recognize this. The terrorism do not recognize such thing as such. And the commitment that they have given that to go against Daesh or other terrorist group, that's wrong, because you cannot separate them. They are one big network of terrorist group, wherever they are. They have always been one of the driving force behind the Taliban to go inside Afghanistan to do this war campaign. It was other group rather than Taliban, like other terrorist group like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Daesh, Al-Qaeda, and all of them, they were there. So at this moment, right now, they have got a big power inside Afghanistan. They are and the Taliban do not have the will, do not have the ability to really kick them out or to fight against them. I wonder why. I think either maybe the Khalizat in America, either they are naive or they don't want to see, or they say, okay, we are safe, let the rest of the world, including Europe, whatever they want to do, they want to do. That's wrong. That's wrong. So they're all there. So that sort of talks that, well, the Taliban may go against the Al-Qaeda, may go against that. That's totally, absolutely wrong. This is a very wrong perception given to the public opinion, especially to the European, to say that, well, the Taliban, well, we say they may go against Daesh or other terrorist group. That's wrong.
Mr. Ambassador, on the legitimacy ground, if currently the resistance is going to form another parallel government, will the resistance lose the legitimacy from the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan? That currently Mr. Amrullah Saleh is the caretaker president?
Well, let me put it this way. Now, there's no government in Afghanistan. There are no legitimacy in Afghanistan. And that old regime, as you talked about, Mr. Amrullah Saleh has been part of the old regime like that. If you want to have a parallel government in Afghanistan, we have to really make it out of the new faces, not the remaining of the old regime of Afghanistan. Why? Because they do not have the trust and confidence of the people. So therefore, the whole service must be new. So it can really kind of reflect the new aspiration, especially of the younger generation of Afghanistan, who do not want the Taliban or their belief or terrorism for them. So we better go for a new version rather to stick with the old regime. Who was corrupt? Who was the cause of today's situation?
So the new government will it immediately cease and lose the international recognition? That this is the point.
Yes, I mean, that's exactly, we have really to try to, first, to convince the international community to be careful about recognizing the Taliban government. And second, what is our new version? What exactly, if we don't recognize, what is the alternative? We have to really kind of work out on that one as well. At this moment, we are in a dialogue with different parties, different forces, different figures and faces to see how exactly we can work out at the end of the day.
So is the, for example, the Hazaras community, are they doing their own resistance as well? What are the other kind of resistance existed?
Well, of course, you see, resistance at the moment may not have sort of, at the moment, the symbol of the resistance is Ahmad, the son of Massoud, who was there, who's been fighting. But then the voices of the women, the voice of the younger generation, the voices of the civil society, and all of them, of course, it has been in the support of Ahmad's resistance as well. But now when it comes to the kind of structuring the whole resistance, we have to work out that we have to bring from all walks of the community, from Hazara, Pashtun, Tajik, Uzbek, from everybody, to really then show it to the world community that this is our alternative. This is the alternative that you can recognize this one. We are at the moment working on that one. So yes, we do have the resistant voices, but all of these resistant voices have got one common enemy. That is the belief of terrorism and Taliban.
So, Mr. Ambassador, for example, what Portugal could do in this situation, assisting on humanitarian aid, what do you think that Portugal could do here? What role can be from Portugal?
Well, there are ways and means. There are different ways. The first one is that, of course, what they can do, we have got so many people inside Afghanistan. We can find out, we can work out a channel how exactly they can take their help or assistance to the people of Afghanistan inside Afghanistan. That's important. The second one, there are a lot of influx of refugees coming out of Afghanistan, mainly in the neighboring countries, especially one of this country, which is Tajikistan, which have not been in the attention of the world community. That is kind of giving sanctuary to a lot of refugees who are coming there. We have to help these countries as well. And of course, we really have to be careful about the recognition. That's very, very important that the Portugal can be, can be kind of cautious about such things. And of course, until of course we bring something on the surface that can be acceptable by all, that this is the legitimate government, this is the legitimate authority, can it be? And then of course, what else can it do? We have got so many people who want to come out, especially we have got thousands of artists, singers, and good workers, and all of these sort of people who are stuck in Kabul across Afghanistan cannot come out of their houses because of their background, that they have been artists, because they have been a good singer, or they have been a good musician like that. They are kind of stuck, they're hiding. Some of them already have been found and have been killed. We really have to kind of see how exactly we can save them from there as well. So yes, there are quite a big number of the things we need.
Mr. Ambassador, so for instance, help to issue visa for those in life threat, probably, to come to Portugal.
Yes, I mean, there are a lot of people like that. I mean, they are fine people, they are good people. They can be they can have a very constructive role. They are the people who for the past 20 years, somehow they started to make up life, to have something. Some of them have clinics, some of them had some music industry, some of them had some schools, some of them had some cultural institution, all of them. I mean, they are very fine people. They are kind of the essential resource of Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the Taliban are completely against of these people. So that's why their life has been threatened. How exactly we can help them?
Mr. Marques, do you want to continue?
Yes, I would like. Thank you. Maybe with more, I would say, tactical questions, if it's okay. Because we really would like to understand, related with the equipments, the weapons, the military weapon systems that were abandoned. Do you think the Taliban have the capacity to operate these means, in particular aerial means like helicopters and aircrafts? Have they have been seen using them in tactics, in this capacity, military?
Well, let me put it this way first. When the Taliban launched their attack, as I mentioned before, that the whole transfer of power was done, was organized the way that the army should give up to the Taliban. There was no fight as such, that if the Taliban came and the army fight them. It's not that the army did not have the capacity to do so, but because there was some sort of arrangement between Dr. Khalizad, who was the US representative, and Dr. Ghani, who was the president, and some other figures that I would not name it here, there was some sort of arrangement how exactly they should deliver the power to the Taliban. For what purpose, I don't know, but that was something on the ground that everyone is witnessing, especially the army generals who were there, especially the politicians, all of them who were there, that how exactly they were told that to submit to the Taliban. Even when they said that, well, if you ordered us to withdraw from this location, we better take our tanks, our armament, our guns. But they said, no, you don't have to bother about that one. Just you yourself come out of the situation, leave the rest of the thing to the Taliban. Now, the Taliban have had all of this equipment, all of these tanks and armament, but of course they don't know how to use that. As you put it rightly, they don't know how to use the Harvard helicopter, how to use this sort of tank. But they have got some foreign backers who may try to kind of train them how to use that one, how to do that one. The only effective tools that Taliban had before the delivery of power to them was it was called a laser type of the gun that could see during the nighttime. The target could be especially when there was dark, that was a perfect goal, a perfect target, so they could hit them. It's called, I don't know what you call it, but it's called buzz, something like that, which is I don't know, a Russian type. But they used that one. That was an effective tool, especially during night. That's why the Taliban launched their main attack during the night time. But then, of course, about the rest of the equipment, they don't have the knowledge, especially that now so many, these Hawk helicopters already been destroyed there. They don't have the capacity to use that one. And at the same time, since their guns are mainly American, now as American pulled out, they will not have the ammunition to really use that gun. So again, that's another problem like that. So, I mean, as far as I know.
Okay, thank you a lot. And
thank
also,
you. Yes, please, Mr. Marques.
Just one more. Thank you. Have you been reports about some change about tactics from the part of the Taliban, and can suppose a change of capacity of tactics, military in the grounds?
You mean after they took over the country?
Yes.
Well, at this moment, the only tactics we have seen that they are going to different they have got a list of who they should go, and they go to different people's houses. They want to get these commandos from the past government, some military personnel from the past government to take them out to execute them. And they are after session. I'm sure that they are just executing some order which are coming from somewhere else. That's not from Taliban. That must be from some foreign sector who was doing such thing, because the Taliban do not have this sort of knowledge or capacity of this thing. But then they are taking the list to take out people who have been hiding, take out, and some of these people have been killed instantly, and some of them have been taken somewhere that we don't know what exactly they have been taken like that. So the only tactics at the moment they are using to terrorize life of the people, to threaten them, to show them the strength, the iron fist, the whole thing. They are doing everywhere in Afghanistan, across the country in Afghanistan. That's what at the moment they are doing.
Mr. Ambassador, a fine example must be, for example, the execution of the brother of the caretaker president Amrullah Saleh yesterday.
Yes. I mean, let's say a few days ago, two of my nieces, they executed them. And the brother of Amrullah Saleh. There are a lot of a big number of people. The media do not have access because the Taliban are doing this one for a long time. But now, since they have come to there, they are doing such thing. Let's say one of the other thing that asked me about the change of the tactics of Taliban. Now, for example, in Panjshir Valley, what they did lately, Panjshir is 120 kilometers of the valley. It's a long valley. but it's got side valleys, of course. You know, because they could not make it, then they brought from every province 30,000 fighters from every province. It was always tens of thousands of fighters they brought there to just put it with a lot of tanks and everything to protect the go and push for the Panjshir Valley. But since then, now some of these forces came out, but those forces who remained there, they're kind of, again, they're going to people's houses and killing and massacring and selective killing, intimidating. We have got a horrific kind of photos of teens and children, the way they are doing, they're killing these teens and these children. This is horrific. Because I don't know why they do this on the children like that. They don't do that with the men, they just kill instantly. But with the children, they're doing something very horrific, very horrific.
Mr. Ambassador, among the Taliban fighters, there were several corpses with international ID. For instance, from Pakistan, and which countries more? Do you have this assessment?
Well, let me say that there are terrorists from across the world. There are Pakistanis, there are Chechen, there are Tajik, there are Uzbek, there are Igoris from China. There are a lot of them, They're everywhere, from everywhere there. Of course, I mean, that's what I'm saying, that Afghanistan is now becoming the hub of terrorism right now.
Mr. Marcus, do you have some other questions related?
No, thank you.
Or so, Mr. Branquinho?
Well, Ambassador, I would like to ask you on a geopolitical way of looking at today's Afghanistan situation. What do you think are the major players? Pakistan, but also China. That we saw that almost anticipated the talks with the Taliban, and we don't know exactly what kind of relation we'll have with this so-called government. But of course, Iran, and also you talked earlier about the countries in the north that mainly help Afghan refugees. What do you think are the major players and major what is at stake for the neighboring countries of Afghanistan?
Well, as we all know, that Pakistan have been involved in their relation with Afghanistan for decades. So Pakistan have got a major influence on Taliban, and of course, peace and war in Pakistan and Afghanistan have been mainly dependent on the strategy of Pakistan. There is no doubt about this one. I mean, it goes without question. Then China is a new kind of player in the affair of Afghanistan. China, as some expertise put it, that wherever they can see an empty or sort of area or a vacated area, then China want to enter. So they have given us a sort of signal that they are one of the things who was interested in Afghanistan, mainly because China do have a deal with Iran as far as the energy is concerned from Iran to China. So they want to have a safe passage there. But at the same time, China is close to Pakistan. Probably China at the moment kind of may use that vacuum which is left by American living in Afghanistan. They may want to fill that vacuum in the region itself. So that in itself has got interest. Then, of course, it comes with the Qataris. Qataris have been involved with the Taliban for a long, long time as well, and it's close to Pakistan as well. So Qataris may have some interest as such. But, of course, their countries have, I mean, at least two of them, they have had traditional relation with the Taliban from the past, but China is a new player. And so it means probably now that relation that you talk about that may change, the whole equation may change in the region since America left altogether, and the whole thing may change. So what shape it will take, whether these countries will come into some sort of consensus or agreement amongst themselves, or they may once again start kind of opposing each other. Again, Afghanistan having 6 neighbor countries and so many regional power is the victim of its own location, of its own geography, and the only loser is the people of Afghanistan and Afghanistan as a whole. Because we don't have the government, you don't have the sort of leadership to preserve the interests of Afghanistan in this big game. So the game is very big. Afghanistan is very weak. It does not have leadership. And therefore, the only loser at the moment we can see is the people